Hey, this is Dan from learningcameras.com, and here we've got the brand new 24-70 f4 IS, and we're going to take a look around at this lens. We're going to take a look at some of the features, the build quality, sharpness, vignetting, all of that stuff. So when we first take a look at this lens and I open the box, it feels very similar in the hand to the 24-105. So if you have that lens, this is going to feel right at home. Overall, it's a little bit smaller than that lens. Now, starting out, I will say the zoom ring is going to be a little close to the body of the camera when we have that on, and it's a pretty thin zoom ring, so it's not the easiest thing to find and zoom. It's pretty stiff on there as we go. Now, the focus ring is also very small, but it's very easy to find because it's a little further up on it. It's much looser than it was on, and it is on my 24-105. So it's almost a little too loose to where it kind of feels a little chintzy, but it should be pretty easy to get some smooth motion. So I guess that's what they were going for. It's a little more geared to those who might be doing video where the focus can be adjusted a little bit easier. If you're doing this for photo use, you got to be very careful because this is going to be pretty easy to turn on that. Now, my lens hood, for some reason, it doesn't fit very well on the lens. It's definitely loose. You can even hear it. I'm not sure if you can hear that on the camera, but you can hear it move, and it kind of feels like the overall lens might be moving. Now, it does have a lock on this lens, so you actually have to press a button before you release it, and I don't know if that's one of the reasons they made it very loose and put a lock on it rather than making it a tight fit lens. So overall, that's the basics of the build quality. We do have our pinch design caps from Canon now, and those are very good, very easy to use, much better. Lens hood still on, and I can still pick up and put back on this cap. Overall, very, very good. I'm glad to see that. Build quality, good. What we're used to on that. Now, this is a little bit more expensive at $1,500, so it's not quite up to standard with some of the higher end lenses. It's nothing like what 70-200 f4 IS is, but it's good. Nothing really wrong with it except for the lens hood and that wobble, and I wish they could take it out because I keep feeling like that wobble is actually in this zoom, but it's not. It's only in the lens hood, but it makes it feel like the whole lens is moving on there and kind of gives a chintzy feeling to it. Now, the first test we have on this is going to be a sharpness test. Now, what we're going to do for this test is basically just take a picture of this box, and we're going to take it at 24, 50, and 70 millimeters and just see what we have on there. So when we take it first, we'll take a look at the 24 millimeter. And the 24 at f4 looks good, not great. It's definitely not geared to work at 24 millimeters. It's not quite as good as what we've seen from some of the wide angles, nothing like a prime, even at f4. It's not what we're seeing from some of the better primes or the wide angles, even at f2.8. So it's not bad though. Everything is very usable. At f4, I'd be happy with it. At f5.6, still not really a lot of improvement on that, just a little bit, but overall it looks pretty good. Now, when we get to 50 millimeters, this is definitely the sweet spot of a lens. Very, very sharp. Very good at f4, definitely what the lens was geared to on that. Now, when we take a look at it at f5.6, things get a little bit better on there. Not a ton, but it definitely has more contrast to it. Overall, this lens has a lot of contrast, not a lot of chromatic abrasion or anything like that on it, so it looks very good. Now, when we take a look at this lens at 70 millimeters, it gets even a little bit better on, or actually not quite as good as 50, but better than the 24 millimeter. But at f4, it still looks very good, very sharp, way better than what I was seeing with the 24-105. So if you're looking at this as an improvement on that, you'll be happy with the results. When we boost that up to f5.6, it even looks a little bit better on that, not a massive improvement. So overall, I would feel very comfortable with this lens at f4. Everything was very sharp. I didn't have to do any kind of adjustments in the camera. We're looking at a pretty good gain from what we were used to in the 24-105. Now, another big difference is going to be the corners. The corners in the 24-105 looked horrible. In the 24-70 now, this f4 IS, things look pretty good. It's not as good as the center, but it goes down a little bit. But things look very usable and very good, so I feel a lot more confident about using some of the wide ends on this. Now, when we take a look at the vignetting test that we did on this lens, you can see that there is some vignetting in the corners. It's not as smooth as I would like it to be. It's definitely an improvement of what we used to see on the 24-105. It's good, it's not great. At f5.6, it pretty much goes away. So at f4, it's a little heavy for an f4 lens on a lot of other zooms or prime lenses. This is about what you look at f2.8. So it's a little on the strong side, but it's easy to take that out in software, so not much of a concern on something like that. Now when we take a look at the flare shots, flare is another issue that can sometimes be a big deal and sometimes not be a big deal. I tried in the circumstances to get this to flare up, couldn't really get anything on that. Contrast still looked good across the frame, better than a 24-105. Couldn't really get any issues. Now I did have the lens hood on and it comes with it, so that was a good test on that. And really and truly, I really wasn't able to introduce any flare. So if you see any, it's probably the exception rather than the rule. And just tilt your camera a little bit more and you should be fine with that. Now, as far as focusing goes, this is a Canon lens. You're gonna get a USM motor on this, so overall it's gonna be very high speed. On my test, we were looking at a little bit better than I got on the Canon 24-105, just slightly. I was measuring most of my times on this one in less than half of a second, going from all the way to infinity to about 2 feet in, and that's kind of an extreme, so that's probably the worst case scenario on that. And overall my times were less than half of a second, and on the 24-105 they were a little bit longer, about half a second to 50.55. So overall you're going to get a very quick, very good focusing. Everything was accurate. I didn't have any discrepancies with that. Now, one big bonus on this is going to be the macro abilities, and it is amazing. So this is one of the first times I picked up a zoom that literally is just as good or almost as good as a full 1:1 macro lens. So 0.701, not quite 1:1, but definitely close enough to get objects right to the front of the lens. I had to take off the lens hood to get it close enough, because you're looking at about a 7-inch minimum focusing distance on that. That took you right to the front of the lens on that. Now, to do that, you actually, this is kind of a little tricky on here. When you zoom the lens, you have to actually hit this button up, and then it zooms a little bit further to about 80 millimeters. I guarantee you that there's going to be people that own this lens and don't even realize how to activate that switch and zoom, because if you don't activate the switch and you just think you've activated it, it's not going to put it into macro mode. So you have to push up on that switch and zoom at the same time, and that will get you into that 80 millimeter macro mode. Big bonus on this lens. If you're looking for a macro lens and you need a zoom, this is one of the only ones that's going to give you this good result on that. Plus, it's got stabilization, so that's great. You're going to get some of the performance that you would get from like the 100 millimeter 2.8L. So it's not a 2.8, but for most macro things, you're probably not shooting at 2.8 anyway. So this is a great lens for macro. Now, testing the bokeh of this lens, everything looks smooth thanks to a 9-blade aperture on this one. So we've got 9 blades. The previous one had 8, so we're definitely looking at things a little bit smoother. The other one, the old 24-105, looked pretty round, but this is definitely a little bit smoother than that lens, and overall it looks great. Now at f4 at 70 millimeters, it's going to be pretty hard to blow out that background. At 105 millimeters on the other f4 was a little bit easier. So it's going to be a little harder to get that kind of shallow depth of field on this lens versus the old 24-105, but if you can pull it off, if you're shooting something up close, for example, you're going to get that depth of field on that very shallow depth of field, and overall it looks very good on this lens. Now, just for a quick video test as well, we're going to take this lens. I've got it up to 70 millimeters. I don't have the steadiest hands in the world, so it should be a pretty worst case scenario test, and we'll go ahead and start out videotaping without stabilization, and I'm going to kind of hold it about as still as I can, and you can see that my hands are not very still at all. We've got this mounted to a Canon 7D, so now let's go ahead and flip on that image stabilization on there. Overall things look much smoother, occasionally a little jump. My hands wobble around like crazy though, and this is at 70 millimeters, so this is a very good test. Definitely performing extremely well. If you've got even reasonably still hands, this is going to look wonderful for you, just because of the results that I'm seeing from me doing this test. So in conclusion, you're looking at a very powerful lens, definitely better than the 24-105. Definitely better than pretty much anything else that we've got on the market in an f4. The build is decent, it's not unbelievable. I will say that nothing on this lens is earth-shattering except for the fact that you do have that macro ability, and you are paying a pretty high price for this lens. $1,500 is not cheap. Now you can go get the Tamron 24-70 f2.8, and that is also stabilized for about $200 cheaper at this time. That lens is going to give you one stop more on the low light, but you're going to lose out on the macro abilities. So overall, it's a great lens. If you have the money and don't mind shooting at an f4 aperture, this is a great lens to go for. For my uses, I really need to stay at f2.8 to go indoors, or else I'm shooting at anywhere from 1600 ISO to 6400 ISO and up in most of my indoor shooting. So I love the 2.8s. But if you don't mind the f4, especially if you're outside and you don't need to blur out that background as much, this isn't as good of a portrait lens because you can't get that shallow of a depth of field. But if you don't mind shooting at f4, great lens. Macro ability is amazing. The image stabilization is wonderful. And so overall, if you got a video, this is going to be a pretty good video lens for you as well. So overall, everything was good on this lens. Highly recommend it. If you don't mind paying $1,500 for the f4 lens, definitely go look and pick this lens up.